Okay. Well, you have to introduce yourself.
When the light is red, the light is on, that means I'm on?
That means you're on.
Okay, can you erase what I just said?
This is going to be a long interview if this continues.
Yes, if we're going to go back and forth.
Okay, so introduce yourself.
Okay, so you want me to say that I'm Raymonde Mitchell, Raymonde Crespi, Harush, Shelepis, Mitchell.
All right.
I was born just Raymonde Harush.
And when were you born? What's your birth date?
I have 3 birthdays. The official one I was born, it was January the 2nd, 1928. And but my mom always told me I was born. Dad made a mistake, registered me with 1 day difference. So when we came to the United States, I was so happy to be with the real date, which was January the 1st. So from then on, I became January the 1st, 1928. Only to find out in 1984, when I asked my mom, and I said, Mom, she said there was a day different. She said, I don't remember the date. Don't bother me. You know, she was just within 2 months of leaving us. And she said, all I know is that you were born on a Tuesday morning, at 2 o'clock in the morning, which I know. And I checked the calendar. Would you believe that Tuesday morning was not the 2nd like my dad wrote, or the 1st like I thought, but rather the 3rd of January. But nevertheless, I am January the 1st, 1928, sure.
Okay, and what's our relationship?
You're my numero 3. You're my 3rd son.
Great, and where are we?
Hey, hi, where are we? In Marietta, Georgia, USA.
Okay, and I have to get in the camera very quickly. I'm Andre Mitchell. I'm the number 3 son, and this is 1388 Prestige Valley Road. Yes, in Marietta, Georgia. Okay,
right.
Enough of me.
Okay.
Okay, what are your mom and dad's formal names? What are their birthdays, and where were they born?
Well, all this will be written on the family history. But I will tell you very briefly that I don't know the years, I forgot. I think my dad was 1889, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And my mother in 1898, I think.
And where were they born?
My dad was born in Cairo and died and lived in Cairo all his life. Different houses, different addresses, but died in Israel. He left in Israel like 3 years before he passed away, and he died in 1955 with my brother Joe, that he wanted to join when my brother Joe left in 1952. And my mom, who they're both Sephardic. The origins of my father are from Morocco. That's where the name Harush comes. I really don't know what happened from 1492 that we were expulsed from Spain. On my dad's side, I think they went to Morocco and stayed there. I'm not sure. It could be Fez. But his father, Joe would tell you about all this. I think he already told you. His father came from Morocco to Egypt, because Egypt at that time was an important country to go to for Europeans. Remember, we were Europeans. That's how we were considered. All the white people are Europeans. That's how they called them. So for 2 or 3 generations they were in Egypt, and that's where my dad was born. Mm-hmm. My mom was born in Turkey, although she was born Esther Ben-Ghiat, and she married Jacques Crespi. When the Crespi were in Turkey for, as far as we remember, they were there 5 centuries. Very well to do, very well educated, titles and very upper class people. When Jacques Crespi wanted to get married, he was in his early 20s or so.
Who's Jacques Crespi?
Jacques Crespi.
What's his relation to you?
He's my grandfather.
Okay.
When he wanted to get married, I don't know really why, he went to Cairo to Alexandria to find a bride. There was no reason. I mean, I don't know the reason. I know he was very fragile in health. Actually, he died young, very young, in his early 30s. He went and met my grandmother and took her back home to Turkey, Istanbul.
And what's your grandmother's name?
Constantinople. My grandmother's name is Rebecca Benguiat. Forgot her. Yeah, Benguiat is her maiden name. So he married her and took her to Constantinople, which is now Istanbul. And they had the oldest daughter. They had 3 children. The oldest one is Fanny, my aunt Fanny, and the second one is, actually, I think my mother was the second one. I can't remember who was the baby, she or her brother Salvatore. Nevertheless, regardless. Anyway, so after they had 3 children, no, my mother was the youngest because she was just a baby when her father died. So Jacques Crespi, and they called him Jacobo. Yakov. He had many names. Anyway, his name is name of his grandfather and on. So when he died, his parents, and that leaves a bitter taste in my mouth, when he died, they had his wife and 3 children to take care of. And they said, you know what, I think you should go back to your family in Alexandria. So they sent my grandmother, which I adored, she was so sweet, they sent her back to Alexandria with 3 small children. And at that time, it's not just like now. What do they do? What does a woman do? So she became a seamstress or something. In Alexandria. Anyway, okay. So that's how we helped each other. The families helped each other. And my Aunt Fanny, the oldest, had got engaged to Joseph Sansino, who was a magnificent person. I keep him as big as my heart. And he, when he got engaged to Fanny, he was helping the family to raise the children. And then they moved to, I know they moved to Cairo later on. But my uncle Joseph, who is my uncle because he is my aunt's husband, and he's the father of my cousin Becky. They had 2 children. Becky was the oldest, Rebecca, she had her grandmother's name, and Maggie, that's the second daughter, and then the youngest was Edwin. But he used to come and visit us. He traveled all over the world. He traveled to India. I remember one day I must have been like 8 years old or 7 years old. He came back from India.
This is your uncle?
He's the husband of my aunt.
Yeah. Sorry, which aunt?
Fanny.
Oh, okay. Your mom's older sister.
Right.
Right.
So he came back and would just give us money to treat us. Remember, I'm child, which I haven't told you yet, I'm child number 6 of 7. So we were a lot of nephews and nieces and in need because there were too many kids, and it was during the 30s, which had the depression.
Mm-hmm.
But he was so wonderful. He would give me money if I spoke Hebrew to him. And at that time I was going to a Hebrew school, to a Jewish school. And he would say, okay. So he would speak Hebrew to me, and I would speak Hebrew to him. Speaking is saying just a few words, and what a good excuse to give me some money.
Do you remember anything of what you would say to him?
What I was saying then?
In Hebrew?
No. But his humor is he would say, I would give you 5 piastres, a shilling. A shilling if you can do what I do. And he would go like this, and finally pull his teeth out. Of course, he was wearing, how do you say it,
dentures or whatever.
He was wearing a denture. We didn't know. We were kids. We pulled, and our teeth, of course, didn't come out. But that's his sense of humor. And he said, okay, you know what? Maybe he'd make an excuse and give us the shilling anyway, which was like giving me $5 or $50. I don't know, a lot of money. Anyway, so that's
kind of some background about your mother's side and how they came in.
That's how she came in with her, as I said.
Yeah.
Her parents, her
grandparents. Do you know how your mom met your father?
Oh, yeah, I heard about it. My mother was beautiful. She had such light in her, bright blue eyes and blonde, white skin, just gorgeous. She was beautiful. Everybody knew her by her beauty. I remember one day salesman said, I go back and forth, that's okay. We went shopping. The 4 daughters, first I have to start. We are 4 girls, 3 boys. One of the boys died when I was like 2 years old. So let's count my family as being 6, 4 girls and 2 boys.
That was Raphael who died, right?
That's Raphael.
How old was he?
He was, I think, 8 years old.
How did he die?
He had, I'll get to it. I can't think of it. He was sick, and but it's contagious. Anyway, so we were in a store, and my mom took her 4 daughters with her, and she was always afraid of the evil eye because we were all beautiful girls. And the guy came to us one day. I can't forget that. I was 10, and he said, "Do you see the beauty of the 4 of you? You can add them up, and you will still not equal the beauty of your mother."
What a nice compliment.
Because he knew her when she was younger.
Wow.
So when my father saw my mom one day, I don't know exactly where it was.
In Alexandria?
That's exactly what I said. I don't know if it's Alexandria or Cairo. I think at that time she was already in Cairo. I'm not sure when day. And could be Alexandria. And I lose. Je perds le fil d'idée. I lose
the sequence.
Yes, but because I don't remember what was I saying about my mom.
Well, how were your mom and dad met?
That's right. So my father saw her from far, and he said, "Who is this gorgeous girl?" Because she was 15. 15.
Wow.
Well, at that time they married young, but anyway, she was just a young teenager.
How old is he?
And 10 years older. If you ask me, I forget. But it's a good question. He was 10 years older. And he said to my uncle, actually, I think it was the husband of my Aunt Fanny, the one I was just talking about, Joseph Salsino. That's where Joe Bisada gets his name, from his grandfather, Joseph. And he turned around and he said, "Who is this girl?" And I said, "Oh, she's a kid. She's 15 years old or so." He said, "I'm going to marry her. She's a leader." Well, he wanted her. So he met her, And they were engaged because he was going to wait till she grows up to marry her. And in fact, he was very handsome and very debonair. He always looked. Everything was perfect about him. His hair, his dress. And he's so handsome. So she fell in love with him too, And they got married. And had 7 children.
Yeah. How old were they when they got married? Like, your mom was like 18 or something?
No, before. She must have been
16, 17?
Yeah, she must have been 16. They got engaged, and then 2 years later they got married.
Wow.
Actually, I know. Yeah, it's 2 years because they were married. Joe was born in 16. I'm not so sure. I have all this written down. I remember.
Yeah, it's okay. We don't have to get all that on tape. Right. We'll have it written down. So there was a big community of Jews in both Cairo and in Alexandria?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any idea how many?
It seems like the whole world was Jewish there.
Yeah. How did they all get there? Had they always been there for, centuries? Or were they mostly new arrivals, like the Greeks?
The Jews were they always had a presence in Egypt. Are you okay, honey? There was always a Jewish presence. I know of Moshe Rabbeinu, which is the Rambam. He was there in the year 1100, and he had gone from Spain. No.
He traveled a lot, yeah. Maimonides, yeah.
Right, Maimonides,
yeah.
Yes. And so that's his presence in Egypt, and he was a doctor there, and a financier, and a political advisor, etc.
Yeah, a poet, and many things.
So some of them were there, but from most of the Jews that were there not longer than the ones we're talking about. This huge Jewish community was there not more than a century. And they gradually came from all over the world because there were business opportunities there. So
Egypt was growing and the business was good. And
Egypt was not growing. They made Egypt grow. All the Europeans. So there was a large Jewish community, an Italian community, a Greek community. Greek was in Alexandria. The Greek community was in Alexandria. But there was also a Jewish community in Alexandria. And, for example, Claude, my sister Huguette's husband, is half Smuha. Smuha is his mother's name. And they owned practically half of Alexandria in land. So at that time, being a multimillionaire is beyond understanding. But all the Jews did well because they're hard workers, they're hard-working people. So that's why there were a lot of Jewish European people in Egypt.
Yeah. So when you were born, and what were your mom and dad doing at the time? Do you know?
I was born in Helwan. And Helwan is a suburb south of Cairo. It's in the desert. It's really it's in the middle of the desert. My brother Joe had pleurésie, which is something in his chest. And the doctor said, you've got to go to the desert. So here my mom and dad pack everything, the children, everything. And where do they go? In Helwan. So we were in Helwan because of my brother Joe's health. And I was born, after I was born, Liliane, my young sister, the youngest of all of us, was born 2 years later, yet in Helwan. So I lived in Helwan. We all lived for 4 years, and then we went back to Cairo.
What was your dad doing to make a living for such a big family?
You know what, he tried so many things. I don't remember at that time exactly what he was doing, but I have the records. Because my brother Joe told me every year what he was doing. He had a hard life trying to figure out what to do here, what to do there. And remember, at 28, I was born, Liliane was born in 30, and there was the recession all over the world.
Yeah, the Depression, yeah.
Right. So in 32 he left, he went to Cairo to do something else. So he's been in many kind of businesses.
So when you were in Cairo, what kind of schools were they that you would go to?
Well, we went to Jewish schools, and it's called La Community. Well, the schools from the Jewish community. And the name of my school, this was called, because they're private schools, Marie Suarez.
And this is a grade school for when you're very young?
Right. Marie Suarez, but l'école de... Oh my God.
No, you'll remember it later. But
yeah, I'll come because it's...
Yeah, when you try too hard, sometimes it's hard to remember.
No, I mentioned this so often. Suddenly it's... Anyway.
But this is the school you went to as a child?
Right. No. My brother Joe went to a Catholic school, like Jesuit brothers, priests. They had the best French schools. So he went to the Jesuit. My brother, fortunately, I'm going down in sequence, who was 2 years younger, went to l'École de la Mère de Dieu, Mother of God, another religious Catholic school that they had the best education came from the nuns and the priests. So she went there, and this is where they had princesses going to these schools and extremely good education. And my mom was for good education, which is unheard of at that time, okay? Especially girls. And then my brother Jacques also went to l'École des Frères. It means the school, l'École des Frères Jésuites, the Jesuit. But then they changed. So when Joe finished, I know he went to a school of commerce.
Okay. So you said about the schools of your older brothers and sisters, but what about you?
Huguette is my older sister. She's 3 years older. Me and Liliane, who's 2 years younger. We went at the same schools all the time. I mean, we didn't change. And the school we went to when we were little was l'École de la Communauté Israélite. And ours specifically was even the best. Of the groups of Jewish community, we went to l'École Marie Suarez, which is walking distance from my house. Do you remember where it was when we were in Egypt?
I remember visiting, yeah.
Okay, anyway, it was just close to Marie Suarez. To Sakakini, I should have said, I'm sorry. Sakakini is a very rich family who built a castle in the middle of Cairo, in the middle of a circle. And it's all French. You remember the pictures we have taken? And out of it, there's a name for it. The streets were going out like rays of sun. And this was in Sakakini, and we had our house here, and the school was there.
Oh, that was the place that we saw? That was in the center there?
Yes, and we tried to go in. It was disrepair. Well, anyway, so all I had to do is just cross the circle and go, and the school was there. So we learned 5 languages. That's what I learned Hebrew. Well, we learned French, because it's a French school. French is the main language, and then Italian, Arabic, Hebrew, and some English. Hardly any English, because it was not important at that time.
So why was all the education in French? I mean, you're in Egypt. Why is everybody speaking French?
We're going into the history of Egypt now, and that's not what you want. The French were dominant because of the Suez Canal. And then came the British. That's why we changed from French to English, just to accommodate
the latest occupiers.
The occupiers, exactly. And we hardly learned Arabic. It wasn't important. We were above learning it, but it's the language of the city, of the country.
Did you interface a lot with the Egyptians speaking Arabic?
No. We didn't. Everybody was Jewish around there. Really, there were some maybe a little bit of some now and then, but we were the main group of people. Anyway, so about the school, so we were there until I was about 10 years old, I think 11, and we moved from Sakakini, which is a suburb of Cairo. We moved to Cairo, to the city. It was more chic at that time. You know, things changed. So that's where the apartment, you remember, you saw? That's where we lived.
Where were you?
Floor.
Where were you living before that? And it's still also in
Sakakini.
But in an apartment building type thing? Or?
We always lived in apartment buildings. We would rent an apartment in a building. All of us did. I don't know of anyone who had a house. There was a house just next to our building. It was owned by a Syrian or Egyptian family, which we visited. We were just close. We were kids. No, there was no friction whatsoever. I think the Egyptians, there were no public schools, and even if there were, it was below our status. We didn't go there, and neither did they go. They would go to Catholic schools. Anyway, so after we moved to Cairo, we went to a Jewish school which was called Jabes, École Jabes. We could walk there. It wasn't a good school. So after the end of the year, I wasn't happy.
Who ran that school?
A Jewish family by the name of Jabes. And it was almost like a business. So my mother wanted the best school, and she asked Becky, my cousin Becky, who lived in Heliopolis, which is north of Cairo. And my cousin Becky suggested that we go to St. Clair's College, an English school, especially because at that time the British were in, because of World War II, that was getting nearby, and everybody was learning to speak English, and the country was becoming more British because of the British protectorate than French. So my mother decided that we'd be better off going to an English school, which we did, especially that it was supposed to be one of the very best. It was a nuns' school. It's a nuns' convent. I didn't think now, in hindsight, if my mother knew, all the effort she went through just to take us there, and she would ask for a discount because at a certain time, because my dad wasn't doing well at that time. So because of Becky, and she was like Saint Rebecca. Everybody loved this woman, and she had influence in the church. So we went, and then my mom, she was the most wonderful human being I know. She worked so hard for us. She was a wonderful mother. She told the school, the superior, Mother Hilaria, which for us to have such a discount, that she would volunteer to do some kind of help, and the only thing she could do was to help the seamstresses, because the uniforms were made at school. So she would come and give some time to help. She had all the others at home, a maid, my grandmother, my father, and she took time, because it was an hour and a half away from home, by taking a metro, just to help the school to be able to indirectly pay for having us be students in the good school.
Who went to that school? You and Huguette?
Huguette, me, and Lilian.
And basically that was like a high school, right? Up until about age 17?
Until 8th grade.
Oh, 8th grade, okay.
No, actually more than that, because there was, after the 8th grade, there was junior high school. Junior Oxford it was called. And then it's Oxford and Cambridge, and you passed the test, then you got your matriculation, which is the high school certificate.
Right. So you were there for how many years?
I don't remember.
Like 5, roughly?
More.
Hmm.
So we went there. The bus would pick us up at 5:30 in the morning, and my mother had already cooked lunch and set it in gamelle. I don't know how they say this. Containers, one on top of the other, and they're held by the top. And we'd give it to the kitchen at school, and they would warm it up. So for lunch, we'd go and it would be warm. 5:30 in the morning, our lunch was ready. Fortuné had stopped going to school, and she helped her because she's older. She had finished the French school. She would help my mother, 5 o'clock in the morning, cook for her little brothers. I just adored my sister Fortuné, which just died less than a year ago. And I miss her terribly. Anyway, so that's the schools.
And then how would you come home? You would take a metro to be able to...
When we were little, the bus would pick us up and drive us back. But then when we grew up a little bit, we would walk to the metro. It's like a 20-minute walk, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Take the metro and go to Heliopolis, and then walk to school.
And it was safe for the girls and everything to...
We didn't know what it was not to be safe. I mean, like what? Nobody's going to steal us or touch us. I mean, nobody could lay a hand on us because he'd be killed. One day, descriptive of Egypt, my mother had gone doing some shopping, and the 4 of us were dragging behind her. I don't know, I remember 3. I don't know. My oldest sister, Fortuné, was walking in front because my mother would walk in the back. And the Arabs, the Egyptians, just loved, even if their shoulder touched us, or if their hand touched the skirt pretending it's an accident, it was thrilling for them. So my mother always walked behind us like a hawk. And I was little. How old was I? 7 years old, maybe. And I'd go and, hold her dress like little girls would do. And she, somebody, I don't know what, they probably touched like this, my sister's Fortuné. She said, just a minute. She held him from here like this. And she said, you dared touch my daughter? So the people come around and they want to lynch him. I mean, this is the attitude. You don't touch, you don't look.
That's an Arab mentality?
Right.
Yeah.
You don't look even straight at a girl. So we were all treated the same. And they liked the Europeans, especially in Cairo, because we gave them their business. Most of the Egyptians lived in the villages because they were villagers. Only the upper class lived in Cairo, in the cities. Very few.
So the relationship between the Jews and the Egyptians was fine.
The Europeans. We were Europeans. We weren't Jews. We were Europeans,
right, like
the Greeks, like the Italians, and we all spoke French.
Right.
In Alexandria, they all spoke Greek. That was the funny thing. Anyway, so this is a recollection I had forgotten since I was a kid. But what next do you want to know?
So you grow up in... what was it like growing up with your brothers and sisters? What was the household like? Was it very crowded because you were all together in an apartment?
When you're little and you're born in this kind of life environment, you don't know the difference. You really don't. Well, I shouldn't say that, because I had friends who had bigger houses, but they didn't have the same warmth my family did.
Did you share a bedroom with your sisters?
When we were little in Sakakini, we had 1 bedroom with 2 big beds and 2 girls in each bed. And
your brothers?
My brother had, they had 1 bedroom. So my parents' one bedroom.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't crowded. Well, it must have been, because when I became a teenager, I just couldn't wait to have my own bedroom. And I was the last to get married. So the treat is I had my own bedroom. Yes. But it depends on when you were growing up.
So it must have been a crazy household, people coming in and out all the time. And
This was like...
plus you had some servants, right?
Right.
And they lived with you?
Yeah.
How many?
Well, we had one woman always, and the man would come in the morning, and he would come either for breakfast, lunch, dinner. He would come and go, but he wouldn't live in the house. It was always crowded. I mean, I'd come home from anywhere. There's always my aunt, the neighbor. Everybody's laughing always and kidding, or playing cards, or eating cookies that my mother made. People came in all the time. The door was never locked.
And how did your mom cook for? I mean, she was make food for all these people all the time.
And over there, you don't have refrigerators. You had ice boxes. So first thing in the morning, she would plan for her meal. She would send the man, the servant, to buy whatever we needed, and lunch had to be ready at around 1 o'clock for 10 people. We were 10 people. So the main meal was lunch. So we'd eat there, and then we'd rest. I mean, they did. We were at school. But when we weren't... So it was like the siesta. It's very hot. You can't walk.
And where would you get all the food? Was it at a marketplace?
Yeah. Oh, you've got also the people selling in the street.
What were they selling?
Everything.
And they just
fish.
And they call out.
Fish, yes.
Like how in air?
Fish. All right. Why don't you go to this guy? How much you want? So you have to haggle and hurry up. I don't have the time.
In Arabic, they would.
Sure.
Yeah.
What else? My mother was fluent in Arabic. My father knew Arabic extremely well. He would read the Arabic papers, actually. His French was very good because he went to school learning French. But then when he was 15, his parents had died, and he had to raise his brothers, his family.
Wow.
Right. So that's my dad. So he stopped going to school, but he was working.
I don't think I know that story. How did your father's parents die?
I don't know. Joe may know. I don't know.
Oh, I didn't realize
they
were so young. Were you close with your parents growing up?
What is close? Was she my friend? My mother? She was my mother. I was number 6. I wasn't important. I missed. I think. I realized lately only that I just was one of the group. I was not important. Neither was my little sister Liliane. Liliane actually, whenever anybody wanted anything, they would say, my dad would say, Lila, get me this. She said, why don't you call the servant? She's in the kitchen. She called her. Go get me this, go get me that. But actually we weren't even supposed to go in the kitchen when the man was there, the servant man was there. We'd call him, he'd bring things in.
Who?
Fortuné was spoiled by my dad. She's the oldest. She has his mother's name, Masauda, that's her name. And Joe, my father had an adoration for his oldest son, Joe. So they were the favorites. So when we'd sit on the table, you know who had...
There was a clear hierarchy of who was...
Exactly. I didn't belong. My dream, I think, was to be my dad's favorite. I adored my father. And growing up, I got closer to him and I would flirt with him. And,
What was his personality like?
My father was very sweet. He was a sweet person. My mother would scream all the time. But she never punished us. She never, at least me. The only one she punished and she spanked was Huguette. Not me. I never was scolded. I was never punished.
Yeah.
I was a good girl
So
until I met David Laniado.
Why? Why was that? What was the personality?
Because Huguette even skipped school one day, which is the biggest no-no in the whole world. I mean, she just disobeyed. She didn't do the right thing. She would lie.
And what was the personality of Joe and Fortuné?
Fortuné is my mother's helper. She always helped her. She was always very sweet. But my mother was too busy to give us attention. She had her job to do. And I caught this a little bit from her. When you were growing up, I had my job to do. But it was for different purposes. Why I didn't give you more attention as my children. Not because I copied my mother, but my job is to be a mother, to do things for you.
What was Joe's personality like as a boy?
Joe was the dictator. He was numero uno. Whatever he did, everybody had to listen to him. He would just say, "This is what I said." And we listened. We're afraid of him. You know, just like you were afraid of Eeyore when he was a little one. Hey, you know, same thing with Joe. My sister Fortuné was so sweet. When we were very little, she would take us in her bed and tell us stories and read us stories. And it's not like now, because at that time you didn't read stories. We didn't have children's books. I've never had a children's book, not that I remember. But yet she did. She would tell us stories. She was just wonderful. She was my mom number 2.
And
I've
what?
never seen her angry. She was always very sweet.
And what about Jacques?
Jacques was so sweet. Jacques was wonderful. He's just 5 years older than I am.
And older than you get?
3 years older than me, but 2 years older, and 5 years. So my relationship with him is he kept an eye on me. He wouldn't. He was. He. When I was very little, I had a chip in my tooth because I was playing with him like a little boy. I was a little tomboy when I was little. And then I puberty, then I became feminine. But he would play with me. We were buddies. We were friends. If I ever went to a party when I was a teenager, and my mom would say 9 o'clock, or he would say, 9 o'clock, you're out. I'll pick you up. He would be there at 8:30 to see what I was doing, who I was talking to, and he would take me home. He was my friend. And his friends were in love with me. You know. So he knew how the boys were running, how the boys wanted me in a way. You know. And he was always there to take care of me.
Yeah. If you wanted to tell Susie what his personality was like, what would you tell her?
She probably knows. I told her that he was the sweetest person. He was not arrogant and like Joe. Joe would just spank someone, a little girl.
So who would you say was the biggest influence on you growing up?
In my house?
Just anywhere. Would you say Becky? Or
yeah, but as far as the family is concerned, no one would touch my sister. No one would touch my brother. No one would touch anybody. Especially my little sister Liliane. She was my baby. When we went to school, if I was 5 and she was 3 or 7 or 6 or whatever, I'd take care of her. I really, There was one story with Liliane, because I really loved her very much, but I'm jumping from one thing to another.
No, it's okay.
I know. She got married when she was 17 or 18, and that's when I said I'm alone at home. And she came with Danny as a baby. She would come and stay with us. And I don't know what I said, something that she misunderstood, and she started crying. She thought I was mean. No, not mean, because I'm never mean to her. Like he's sleeping in my bed, and something that she misunderstood, because it was total misunderstanding. And she started crying. She said, "You're telling me this." I started crying with her and hugging her. I said, "No, I love you." And that's my feeling toward Liliane. She knows that. With Huguette, it's a different story. I just found a letter the other night. I should read it to you. It's in French, but it says, from a girl who knew us both at school when we were 10 and 13. And she said, what Huguette at that time was red-headed, ginger, and she had plaids, 2 long plaids, ginger, with her green eyes and freckles. I had short hair, straight short hair. And in the letter she says, how much hair, Raymonde, because the letter was addressed to me, how much hair do you have pulled from Huguette, and how many blows did she leave on your body? Because Huguette would pinch me, it hurt me. She was always very jealous of me. She won't admit it. She was always very jealous of me. And I told her that one day, and she got angry. I was never jealous of you. But yet, on the other hand, she said, I talked to my psychologist, and this is when she's 70. All I talk for years is about you. So that's, in a way, Huguette was the most turbulent one. The rest of us were very sweet. We obeyed, except, as I said, when David came, I was 16 years old, and I had to have a boyfriend, and my mother didn't want him. Anyway.
So tell me about Aunt Becky. I mean, what was she a big influence on you when you were growing up?
Yeah.
Why?
She was like an empress, like a saint, like she had a saying, and she was so dignified, and on top of it she was wealthy, where she converted to Catholicism before she was married. So was her mother.
Why'd they convert?
In the 30s, I would call it very bluntly, it was stylish. And since we all went to Catholic schools, seeing Holy Mary statues, and they're all playing, and little girls looking at these beautiful statues, you wonder, is that beautiful? As Jews didn't have that. We didn't have the Sacred Hearts and all these things that were very, when you were young, you were impressed. So anyway, when her mother, my Tante Fanny, had gone to the hospital, had to go to the hospital, and the hospitals had nuns for nurses. They talked her into healing, into converting. And the religion, the Catholic religion, became very beautiful. So she converted quietly. But the Catholic religion was also very beautiful and converting proof. So the children, Becky also, wanted to find the truth. You remember one day she talked to you about that. And she converted. There was a sentence that hit her, and she realized this is what it is, Jesus. And her sister. And the 3 separately. And the brother. Who Becky didn't want me ever to talk about. But because he wanted to become a priest, they were all going to convert. And he died because he got sick. He went crazy. with this conversion thing. Him and another couple of Jews, especially one, and they died. He died. He got sick and died. So Becky doesn't want the family to know about him. They never talk about him. He's there. His existence. The worst thing in that family, we were very close. Becky and my mother. Becky adored my mother, and my mother adored Becky. My uncle Joseph, which is the father, the one who traveled all the time. And while he was gone, his family became Catholic. And he is the one who wanted me to speak Jewish, to speak Hebrew. And he liked his family to be Jewish. This is why also the book that you read was his daughter's book, who was learning
What book?
Hebrew. The book upstairs that I showed you. And
Right, yeah.
This is Maggie's book. So the father, who was a nice, wonderful Jewish guy, traveling all the time, came back and realized that his family had become Catholic. It broke his heart. He left the house. He divorced. And then he remarried another person, and she was the wife of a nephew or something. It broke his heart and he died. And Becky, until the end, feels guilty because he had an absolute adoration for his daughter. He adored Becky. She was on a pedestal, and everybody put this woman on a pedestal.
So how did she become such a big influence for you?
So, being on that pedestal, everybody saw her on that pedestal. Everything she did was right. Everything she said was perfect. So growing up, I wanted to be like her. I wanted to have her stature, her intelligence, her behavior, her wit, her aristocracy. She was an aristocrat. She never spoke fast. All she did is speak like Holy Mary, Mother of God. What would Holy Mary, Mother of God say? She's going to be very sweet and say the perfect things. That's why she was an influence. So sometimes I would think, if I think of any problem, I would say, if I told my problem to Becky, what would she tell me to do? That's one way of finding an answer to my problem. So growing up, and she was wonderful. She was wonderful to me. She loved me so deeply. Of course, I married a Christian. She came to my wedding. That's why she loved me even more. But we were very related. We lived in the same suburb in Meadi. She couldn't. Ian just adored Tom Bacon, and they would hug each other. He loved her very much. She is the kind of person that made you feel like you're the most important person in the world when she talks to you. This I should have learned from her, because it is very important when you talk to someone to communicate, to look at this person's eye and say, you are the most important. I'm talking to you. There's nothing around except you two. I haven't learned to do that.
Okay. Well, we give 5 more minutes on this video, and then we'll take a break.
How long is the video?
It's 1 hour each.
Have we been almost an hour?
Yeah.
We're not just ever going to hear.
Yeah. And so, are you in touch with any of your friends from childhood?
From?
Childhood.
What is childhood? I was just thinking yesterday. Not yesterday. Lately. No, I'm not going to say it. That's okay.
Okay.
I had a very dear friend when I was 8. Her name was Jacqueline. She died. Somebody told me. I was on the bus going somewhere. And then my friend Lucette died. My best friend. She was 24.
They died when they were kids?
She died when she had my age. 8 years old and she died. The other one was 24 and she died. And I said, I don't want any other friends to die. Did I have friends when I was little?
I'll tell you what, you remember you had the story about you almost drowning. Where was that?
What was it?
In Alexandria or something? Or you went swimming?
In Port Said. No. In summer, my parents would rent a cabin in Port Said. And Port Said is the Mediterranean and the Suez Canal, so the corner. So we'd have the cabin on
Stilts?
Stilts.
Yeah.
Because the water would come. At the beach of Port Said, you go, it's almost flat. And then there's the first step, drops. And then it goes straight. And there's the second step, it drops, and you drown. We were never left at the beach alone. We were little. So I was 2 years old. And my mother had 6 children, one after the other, and she was standing. And I remember it, because I had a bleeding nose all my life. So I was holding my handkerchief on. And then the following 2 years later, we returned. So I was 4. And I mustn't have been, my gray matter must have been working pretty good, because it's going click, click.
We have 5 minutes left.
And we would travel by train. And when I was 4 years old, I remembered that I made the same trip to...
Okay.
And the steps where I was going in the water with Get, and my brother Joe was there, everybody was there, keeping an eye on each other. And then Get drops in, and I drop in. So I pull her with her plaids.
Her ponytails.
Her ponytail.
Yeah.
I put her down and stand on her, and I scream, "Mommy!" So that's when I almost drowned her. So in 2 seconds, my brother Joe was here, pulling us up, and what do you think you're doing here, you know? So this is what, and she said, yes, she was going to drown me. She wanted to drown me, you know, kids, especially how she hated me. That's it. The name of the school is l'École de l'Alliance Française.
What school is this?
L'École de l'Alliance Française when I was little in Sakakini, the Jewish school, but it was really l'Alliance Française is still working now. They have French schools all over the world, and they send French teachers and French papers, books.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they teach French everywhere in all the different cities.
What?
Was that the name of the school that we went to?
L'École de l'Alliance Française. No, we went to St. Clair's College.
Which is where you went for...
Heliopolis, growing up.
That was the Catholic school.
That's right.
Right, okay. All right, yeah, and time for lunch.